Good evening. Prime Minister David Lange spelled out what the budget means to business people in Dunedin today. He discounted the suggestion that businesses would have to foot the bill for illness under changes to accident compensation. And he made much of evidence that the regions may lead the way towards the country's economic recovery. Mark Price reports.
Confidence in cities such as Dunedin and Otago is now higher than the three main centres. In fact, if you look outside those places, the further away you go from them, the higher the confidence. So that Invercargill was actually gung-ho.
One of the main concerns of business people was their ability to compete in the Australian market in the face of that country's system of incentives.
Can I come back to you and say they get that, but they also pay a somewhat different tax rate than we do.
Aside from that, the advantages are still very much...
Yeah, it still has a net advantage from all of that. The answer is that we can't actually achieve a great deal by way of coercion on that. What you do see in Australia is an economy which is actually slowing, an economy which is going to become more relentlessly probed to get a better return. You will find that the central government there is going to be itself very active to stop. They want to stop spending money on that sort of activity as soon as they can.
And as for the budget, as it relates to Labour's chances in the next election...
People stand back and say to us, what on earth is wrong with you? This is not an election-winning budget. And the answer to that is that it's actually more important for New Zealand to have a proper economy than it is to have an election-winning team.
Last night's budget may have saved Dunedin Hospital proposed cuts in surgery, but it mightn't be enough to save the city's Queen Mary Maternity Hospital from the cost-cutting knife. However, Area Health Board Chairman and health economist Michael Cooper is still pondering exactly what the budget will offer. Michael Lynch reports.
Professor Michael Cooper is one of the country's very few health economists, and he should be able to interpret budgets. But on budget night last year, he praised an apparent budget rise for health, only to have it turn into a 3% cut when the fine print was nutted out a few days later. So this year, he's being more cautious.
The budget is more or less consistent with the minimum of our range of predicted cuts.
What this means in practice is the big cost-cutting bogeys like cutting surgery may be avoided, but questions are still begging.
I'm very optimistic that we can avoid cutting surgery, providing we go through with the other changes in the way that we deliver care.
OK, that then means in practice closing Queen Mary Hospital. Are we in fact closing Queen Mary?
We've approved it in principle.
This morning's Dunedin paper had Queen Mary closed. Michael Cooper denies this, saying it'll come up again at the August board meeting and the protesters still have a chance, however thin. But a more concern to health boards, both Otago and Southland, is that now they may have to find much of their own interest payments on new buildings or capital works. In the case of Southland, in hock for over $5 million for the new Queenstown Hospital, this could hurt. But, like much else in the budget, it'll all come clear over the next few weeks.
Education Board delegates from all over New Zealand have gathered in Dunedin for the last conference of their organisation. The boards are being phased out under the Tomorrow's Schools reforms. Education Minister David Lange was in the city to thank the delegates and open the meeting they dubbed their ultimate conference. Kathy Graham was there.
For many delegates who've spent years serving on boards, it was an occasion for nostalgia, sentiment and pride in the system they've worked so hard to maintain. For a number of Education Board staff and board members, the changes will mean an end to their involvement with schools. Otago set up the first Education Board 133 years ago. The history of education under the board system's been recorded in a booklet presented to Mr. Lange. Otago Chairman Nairi Kilpatrick made history herself during that time. She's the first woman ever to chair a board in New Zealand, and she'll be the last.
I think it was a sign that it takes time for women to grow in certain organisations. And sometimes there was no women on education boards, but they're there now and doing a wonderful job, and I'm just honoured to be one of them leading a board.
Some of the delegates, like Mrs. Kilpatrick, will continue to serve on the new boards. But whatever the future holds for them, it'll mean change.
I want particularly to acknowledge the fact that faced with a choice of your standing apart or even being adverse to change, you felt impelled in the interests of children to adopt neither negative position, but to actually go forward and, against real self-interest in some cases, actually move to help this development through.
The boards will serve for another 2 months and then be disbanded.
South Dunedin people will get new 6-digit telephone numbers tonight. This will complete stage 2 of Telecom's $20 million upgrade of the network. Carolyn Harper has the story.
If you live in South Dunedin, don't use your phone at 10 o'clock this evening or your conversation will come to a dead end. At 10, Telecom is cutting off all South Dunedin calls while it changes over to a new computerised exchange. The numbers will have an extra 5 tacked on the front. This means subscribers will be able to take advantage of the latest functions. Workers have been on the job to ensure a smooth changeover to the new system. The third stage of upgrading is already underway and Telecom hopes to have it completed by November.
For the second time in as many games, the Otago rugby team has topped the half-century mark. Today, Otago scored 10 tries in thrashing Hawke's Bay by 60 points to 21 in Napier, with fullback Greg Cooper adding 20 points with the boot. Otago will be out to make it 3 away wins in a row when it plays counties in Pukekohe on Tuesday. Remember bare midriffs, hot pants, chiffon and sequins? We all wore them in the 70s. Now there's a unique display of the best of 70s evening wear at Otago Museum. And as Kim Haring reports, it's all one man's fantasy.
Yes, it's hard to believe we did wear these things, but it's harder to believe they were all collected by a Naseby farmer called Eden Hoare. His passion arose from a connection to the Miss New Zealand shows, and he's become known as the man to pass those gowns to after their brief night of glory. He's also interested in natural fabrics, leather, fur and wool. The top names in 1970s design are all here, but the evening dresses of Kevin Berkahn dominate the display.
Well, as you can see from what's here, it's pretty glamorous, and very extravagant now, because it's like walking down memory lane for me too.
What do you think about your designs looking back on them now?
It's like anything, I suppose. You look back in time and think, did I really do that? Would I put that with that now? In some cases I think no, or perhaps I was a bit adventurous, and then I think perhaps, why did I ever do that?
The museum staff have now put the finishing touches to the display, which is housed in the newly redesigned Great King Street Gallery. And One Man's Fantasy tonight will also feature a modelling of 1989 designs. I don't know about one man's fantasy, but it's certainly one woman's fantasy to wear the latest Kevin Berkahn.
Gorgeous. Have a great weekend. We'll be back Monday. Good night.